Tamayo from JCT4Education for you. And today we have a really cool guest. I'm waiting for many of you to sign up. Remember, all these videos will be live and right now for 24 hours, and then we go on YouTube the following day. And I see Christian. Hola, Christian. Thank you. And our guest is right here. I will say hi and I will invite him over. Let's add it. We're gonna wait. Ta-da-da-da! Our guest coming up. It says waiting on connection. Hola, Maria Cristina. Good to see you, Mr. Crouch.
Hello.
How are you doing,
How's it going?
friend? ¿Cómo estás?
Todo bien aquí en México.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon, actually.
Yeah.
I don't even know anymore what time of the day it is, if it is morning. And here we have Rafa Ojoki. Rafa, hola.
Hi, Rafa.
Hey, Rafa.
Hope he's working on those essays.
Yeah, work on those essays, Rafa. So the topic of today, writing college essays, writing effective college essays. But you know, the title also is Conversations. So I call it Conversations with Mr. Ray Crouch. For those of you that are just joining us, Mr. Crouch, Ray, as I call him, graduated from Yale University. We have a fascinating story before we dip into the college essay. So first of all, how are you, Ray? How are things in Mexico right now?
I'm good. Things have gotten very quiet. As you know, it's in quarantine like everywhere else in the world. And I've just had to kind of adapt, get used to being in my room, find my peace, meditate a little when I can, and just kind of adapt to this new normal.
Okay. Well, later towards the end, maybe you're gonna help us with some meditation exercise. A lot of students right now. I have Antonio Gomez watching from Bogota, Colombia. Hey, Antonio.
Hello.
Here, Antonio, you will be writing a college essay soon, so you better watch the whole show. And
We'll be in touch.
we'll be in touch, and don't leave this chat. So, Ray, you have a fascinating story. For those of you that are just joining us, Ray Crouch, our guest of the day, creating effective college writing, college essays. You actually, you have a family, siblings of quadruplets.
Yes, I am a quadruplet.
A quadruplet. You graduated from Yale University in 2015. And I just can't imagine the four of you going on that college list. So before we were going live, how did you guys decided? First of all, two brothers, two sisters from the quadruplets. How did you all came to an agreement? Were you guys sitting at your living room at a table? Where were you guys that you made that decision to apply to these highly selective universities?
Well, after we all got admitted, it was a big news thing, an international news thing. And initially my sisters wanted to go more to art schools. And my brother and I were more interested in perhaps looking at the Ivy League. And we actually all ended up going to this thing I think it's called Bula Bula Days. It's like a Yale, they invite accepted students to kind of sway them, get them to change their minds. And we all went to that spring. It was our spring break. And I think after that, we were hooked. We met all the people. We did a lot of extracurriculars. And it was just, I was like, wow, it's more than just school. There's so much to do here. There's so many people. There's so many different communities. It was really exciting at the time. And I think that was kind of what helped us all decide, the Bula Bula Days at Yale.
Okay.
That we decided to go together.
So I understand you applied to Brown, you applied to Harvard, you applied to Princeton, you guys applied to Yale, you applied to around 10 schools. And we went through the list. You graduated from Yale, but who rejected you? Who say no to these four beautiful children?
The only school that rejected me actually was Harvard.
Okay.
Which, I accept that. I had a good time at Yale, It's funny because now my brother is there at Harvard Law. He's finishing up at Harvard Law.
Okay, already.
Yeah.
And Ray, your story is fascinating. You guys went to a public school. You guys, Connecticut residents. Hopefully your mom will sign up on the live Instagram. Otherwise, it will be housed on YouTube 24 hours later. But
Absolutely.
how is it to go to high school, the four of you together, and your high school 700 to 800 students?
Yeah.
And tell me the truth. Out of the four, you guys, who placed number one on that ranking at that high school?
So let me give you the whole perspective. My school has 3,000 kids, an
Okay.
average of 3,000 kids. So my class was, it started with 800. And I ended up finishing 21st in my class. My brother finished 20th.
Okay.
So he got to be on the little list. They have the top 20 kids, and his face was there. Although the first few couple of years, my freshman and my sophomore year, I was number one and I was number two and three for the first couple of years.
Okay.
And then I met calculus and a little different, right? But I made it out. I was number 21 actually
Wow.
in that class.
So you guys did the AP curriculum. Was it a lot of
Hmm.
competition with your sisters? Were your sisters in better position than the guys at home?
Well, it's interesting. Like my brother and I were kind of more math and science oriented in high school,
Okay.
and my sisters were more artistically inclined.
Okay.
Like even for example, my sister took AP art history, and I was taking AP calculus. My brother and I took AP calculus. And initially, actually, my sisters were really interested in going to art-related schools or performance schools. One of my sisters
Okay.
she works in theater right now. She just got a grant in Oakland, and she does works in theater. The other one works in museums, and so they were kind of more on the art side,
Mm-hmm.
and my brother and I were kind of more on the maybe analytical, math and science kind of side of
Oh,
things.
okay. Now, so
Yeah.
you made it to the news. I mean, I remember 6 years ago, Christian and I, we worked with triplets.
Costa Rica, I was in rainforests, I was in India and Argentina, I was in many different countries. And I think what kind of put it together for me was I realized that I cared about the environment, but I also was really interested in this anthropology aspect of it, like people, how do people and culture
Okay.
influence all of that. So I kind of did this joint thing by the end of my time at Yale. But yeah, I did really care about the environment. I realized that caring for the environment is a lot more complicated
Yes.
than it seems, right? We even see that right now with COVID and all the animals coming back. But I would say it's worked out, and that spirit is still in me. You
Oh,
know,
wow. So,
yeah.
Ray, once you graduated from Yale, your career took a turn into film
Many
production,
turns.
before you moved to
Yes.
Mexico. So tell us a little bit
Mm,
about that passage into film. You were not a screenwriting, you were in production, correct?
yes. I worked as a production assistant for several years. I worked with an independent theater company that was like exploring the African diaspora. And really, what that came out of me trying to pursue film in New York was that when I got my degree and I kind of realized this angle of people being so important to understanding how to care for the environment, I kind of figured, what's the biggest way to reach people? Well, I feel like anytime I've changed my mind or really been inspired by something, it's been through a film. It's been through watching something that you walk away from, even a Netflix series, or you watch a certain show or a movie, and it really changes the way you see the world. So that was kind of my initial motivation in going into film in the Big Apple, one of the toughest industries to break into. And I learned a lot from that. I realized that there was a lot more to it. There's so many moving parts to making a brilliant film. But after a while, I was like, this is a bit of a burnout for me. So I decided I needed to switch gears. And a friend of mine from Yale invited me to come down and work at an educational startup in
Okay.
Mexico.
Okay.
So I switched gears there and came down here. And I think doing education has really actually showed me another angle to, again, how do you shift consciousness? How do you educate? How do you inspire people through teaching and through words and those kinds of things? You
Now,
know?
I want to ask you a question.
Hmm.
How how much pressure do you guys have preparing for the SAT, ACT down those days, or that came so natural for the four of you? I just can't imagine. And all of us
Yeah.
did did you guys have a strategy of how to study the SAT, ACT during that time?
Well, it was an interesting thing because we were all bright. We were bright kids. We were all on the top. We were in the AP classes. But I do have a lot of thanks to give to a program we were all in, an Upward Bound.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've probably heard of the Upward Bound programs. And we were all members of the CONCAP, the Connecticut chapter of Upward Bound. And they were a godsend because they helped to pay for a lot of our entrances for the SATs.
Okay.
But they were the ones who said, you guys have the grades to get top scores
Okay.
in the SAT.
Okay.
And so, for example, I came out of that. I got a 2290 out of 2400. It was at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
2290. Uh, and yeah. So we like went down that route, and it turns out that we were doing so well in school that we also had grades that kind of translated in the SATs and the ACTs. I think I took the ACT once,
Okay.
and coupled with the AP exams.
Okay.
So it was kind of this. We had a lot of support and a lot of people encouraging us to take these higher level exams.
Well,
I'll be honest too. I didn't know very much about Yale until I was applying in my senior year of high school.
okay. So definitely like
Mm-hmm.
career counselors, coaches, there are
Mm-hmm.
people that deeply care about education. They are highly influencing our lives.
Yes.
In moving through, I'm the result of an educational consultant in Colombia, Don Jesus, where he told me a
Mm-hmm.
couple schools. I came here, apply, actually live in New York, and then in Iowa, thanks to Don
Yeah.
Jesus. So I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah.
that. Before I came on
Yeah.
this live, I was just checking. Cornell University just announced that they're going test optional for this year in lieu to the
Mm.
situation of SAT, ACT being canceled right and left. We can't keep up with
Yes.
those anymore. Uh,
Yeah.
I look at the website of your alma mater. It's still required for some programs, the SAT, ACT. Um, it puts a lot of stress on a student. Not a lot of students.
It
I
does.
don't think that if I take the SAT, ACT right now, I will do well despite my
Mm-hmm.
performance. Puts a lot of stress. What's your take on the standardized testing period?
Yeah. I you know I haven't always been a huge fan of standardized testing, but I can see some of its utility.
Okay.
So a common speech when I would have with kids prepping for the ACT or for the SAT was that I don't necessarily, I don't think a kid should think that the SAT or the ACT is the standard for whether they're smart or not, but rather they should see it as a way that they're preparing for certain kinds of skills. Like if you're a good test taker, it means that you're really working your critical thinking. And if you're a good test taker, it means that you're also really good with time management. So what I've tried to do with students and the students I've worked with is really try to encourage them to see how they can like kind of take the test outside of just the test and see its applications for themselves and how it can be challenging to grow. But I do really feel for students that it is not, it's a stressful thing because you're being compared against people constantly.
Yeah.
So the best they can do is kind of reduce that stress as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
and trust in whatever skills
Okay.
they can bring to the table to do as well as they can in the test.
Now, when the four of you were applying to all these highly selected Ivy League schools, how many times do you write your own essay? And actually, who read your essay and who was that person that gave you feedback for your essay?
Yeah. Well, we were good writers. The four of us we loved our English classes,
Okay.
and we
Okay.
loved to write. My sister used to write short stories all the time just for fun, you know.
Wow.
But we did have my parents looked at it, my English teachers looked at it, and one of my counselors looked at the
Okay.
essay, and a couple close teachers in the high school.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and they kind of looked at it for the grammar, but we were all really passionate about writing, and maybe some of the stuff I talk about with the college essay too. Uh, we really had sort of stories to tell. Each of us found our own stories to tell.
Okay.
Um,
Do you
yeah.
mind sharing that story that you told
Yeah.
universities?
So it's actually funny. My essay was very strange. I was kind of like a jock in high school. I was very exercise focused and health and fitness. And I wrote
Did you
about
have the
how,
Did you have your dreads in high school, or you
no,
have clean cut and clean shave and everything?
These are, yeah, these are, I didn't have any facial hair and my hair was much shorter. Um, yeah, these are, I've had these for 7 years now. Um, but I wrote about sort of like how I take, just like in fitness and in the way I pursued my athletic goals, that in academics and in life, I took alternative routes to like find meaning and to learn from people. And I think I wrote in my essay about, at the time, I did a lot of volunteering. I worked with special ed students as well, special education students in my high school. And I wrote about how like the many different experiences in my life have offered just as deep lessons as like that difficult AP calculus class and that English class and that physics class. Like that, there's many different ways that I would learn in the world, and I learned through my brief athletic career, captain of the track team, and I walked on to the track team at Yale University as well. But
Okay.
I also talked about how that was a learning experience for me, training my body, how it trained my mind, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
So,
Yeah.
so you're definitely a gifted child, and your
Mm.
sisters and brother, I mean, amazing. But I will tell you, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, third
Mm.
year in college. So I
Yeah.
survived high school, I survived college. English
Wow.
is my second language. If a student in history class here in the U.S. will take him an hour for the test, it will take me 3 hours. But unfortunately, I was never given those 3 hours. So
Yeah.
definitely, I could have used some extended time myself. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of students, parents, colleagues. Not everybody is a good writer. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about college essays, I always tell the students I work in admissions for 16 and a half years. I could say that I read thousands of essays now. And I always tell my students, I want to bite my nails. I want those essays to
Mm-hmm.
give me the goosebumps because we read so many essays that were so bad. And I'm not
Mm.
the best writer again, but analytically, I can analyze an essay. So,
Yeah.
what's your message to a student right now that is working from scratch?
Yeah.
How do you strategize to write an
Yeah.
effective winning essay?
It's a great question. Well, the first one thing I do try to get towards students is, first of all, let yourself be honest. Don't see this as another assignment. See this as a bit of like I like to say it's kind of like an extended diary entry. It should be something that really is coming from your heart, and is not something that you feel forced to do for another class, because ultimately the only person you're applying for is yourself,
Okay.
right? No one else is getting into these schools for you. So that's like kind of the first step. But in terms of like a strategy, what I've always liked to say is that it's really good to start when you talk about that nail biting factor, the
Yeah.
nail bite factor,
Yes.
is to really start with a personal hook, an anecdote, a story that the student has in their life that's unique to them, but that they can describe in such a way that is so kind of intriguing and it pulls you in that the reader wants to know, they want to get through the rest of the essay and they want to know who this student is.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of kids will tell me, I don't have a story, I'm not very interesting, but I always tell a student, almost anything in your life that is unique to you
Yes.
is something you can turn into that hook.
Yes.
So that's the first part, is they establish that hook. And then when they're kind of telling that story, they want to kind of give an arc of energy. So that hook brings us in. And then what we're also doing is, as you're telling the story, the student can try to introduce like conflict and reflection in their life. I think sometimes students struggle with, the way we're trained to write essays can be so expository. In other
Yes.
words, we have to argue a point. It can be very superficial. But for a student to open up about conflict and reflection takes a little bit more introspection. So a lot of times when I'm working with kids, I'll even have them kind of do a lot of stream of consciousness initially, and really just try to write as personally as possible. And then usually from there, you can pull out an overarching story and the
Mm-hmm.
themes that the student is exploring. So you go through that, you have your hook, you have a conflict that the student is exploring, and then you want to, if you're gonna bring a conflict into an essay, it's got to be resolved, right? Some kind of issue might be brought up in the student very themselves at hell with or work with. Okay, I'm losing you a little bit. Are you good?
what have you seen? Because I have seen it all.
Yeah. I think 10 can be the extreme for the student who's very anxious about what they're writing,
Okay.
who's really trying to like nitpick on every word. But on average, I'll probably see about like 5 drafts from
Okay.
beginning to end.
Already. Okay.
And that for yeah, something like that, 5 drafts.
Already. So no, because
Hmm.
I remember I have a student who is at Duke University right now. He was
Hmm.
super critique of his own work. I think we went 15 times, and actually
Right.
he went on every single word, want to make sure that everything was perfect. Anyway, that was his own choice. But
Yeah.
let's move into supplements. So you apply to
Sure.
Princeton, you apply to Harvard, you apply to Brown, you apply to all these top universities, Dartmouth. They'll ask you pretty much all of them, why? Why me? Why
Right.
Dartmouth? Why Princeton? Why
Yeah.
Yale? What do you do? What was your
Yeah.
research? How do you base the whys on?
Hmm. So the supplements kind of have a specific strategy that's different from your general college essay. And the biggest thing is it's like a very mini version of that hook and the energy. But the other thing the student wants to do is they want to have a little bit of a personal story. And usually these are going to be 400, 250 word essays. They're much shorter
250,
than your
400.
common.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. And so they want to have a little bit of a personal connection to the school. So say you're a student who likes biology, and they want to study at a top biology school, right? Or study at U Miami, they have a good program. So you want to speak to that school's specific program and speak to the interest that you have on a personal level and why those two things fit,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So they still have to be personal, just like in their Common App essay. But with the supplemental essays, the schools always like to see that you are talking a little bit to them too, to their
Okay.
specific program, that it's not generic, and
Yes.
that you
Yeah.
can also say that succinctly.
Yeah. And those generic supplements, I hate them. I actually tell the
Hmm.
students, this is, I'm sorry, garbage.
Yeah,
They, they're
yeah.
going to deny you right away. So I say go into the nitty gritty. And actually, a couple admission deans, they write their own blogs for the universities.
Mm,
And also the student blogs are very, very successful when referring to that student blog. So I tell a lot of top schools in Boston, they love when they brag about the blogs. And
yeah.
when they go deeper into the student blogs, into the organizations, very simple. Or there is one particular club or organization that you want to belong to, you visited the school. So supplements are, if you think the college essay, the main college essay is an art, supplements are
Mm.
like beyond art. That's
Yes, the
boosting,
fine art.
yeah, it's boosting
Yeah.
institutional knowledge, and they don't wanna know what they already know. They want to know why they're the perfect match. And I
Hmm.
recall a student at BC philosophy. She wrote an extraordinary essay about why she wants to study philosophy at BC, and she got into BC because of that supplement. But in
Yeah.
terms of supplements, how much, again, how many drops would you see for an effective supplement?
Huh. Well, the supplements sometimes can be a couple more because it's so few words, and students love to hang on to those words. And so sometimes I'll say like an average of 6 drafts, a little bit more than the college essay. Uh-huh. Because they really, it's either a student's own, and you really have to be as specific as possible.
Difficulties here. Just hold on for a second.
Yeah.
Hey, Ray, we're back. We're back. Don't worry.
Okay. Cool. Um, yes, that's the internet world, right? That we live in.
Thank you,
Um,
Lord.
yes. Yes. What I was saying is that usually it's a few more drafts in the main Common App essay, and that's just because students need to get down to that perfect word count. And so sometimes, actually, usually that extra draft is just helping a student become a little bit less wordy, right? So it's knocking down, taking that extra and the extra articles out of the sentence, and just making it
Yeah,
the cleanest and shortest and most succinct sentences that you can have. That's usually what it comes down
correct.
to. really showcase their intelligence in different ways that are less standardized than just your SAT score
Hmm.
or your, submitting such and such essays, right? So yeah, I think it's going to take a lot more of a creative approach, but I also think that's going to give more access to students across the country too.
Yes.
Um,
You just mentioned it 5 to 7 times, 7 drafts. Make sure
mhm.
everybody can critique a college essay, but I think just go with the experts, and if it is your school counselor, if it's your mentor, that will be absolutely wonderful. Ray, because
Yeah,
you're so spiritual, you're every time I talk to you, you bring calm. It says go for college. This is my design, go for college. What is your message to the students that are watching
nice.
that are go for college?
Okay,
So
cool.
do you have a message for the students, for the parents, for everybody that is
Hmm.
watching right now?
Yeah, for sure. I would just especially tell students that every single one of you has something unique to give to the world, and to really keep that in your hearts when you're doing this application process, right? So just really emphasizing that it's not a matter of you being a statistic. It's a matter of everybody really being able to contribute in their own way to their own education and to what they see in the world. And to keep in mind, too, that the world that people like Rafa are creating is going to be so much different than the world that you and I live in right now,
Hmm.
right? And so to have faith that, like, these students, you all are the future. You are the future, and I really believe it. I see how sharp these kids are in so many different ways,